This is The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe for middle school. One dark and gloomy afternoon, I arrived at the Usher mansion. It was an enormous ancient house surrounded by dead trees and a silent black lake. The house itself looked creepy. The windows were dark like empty eyes, and a long, thin crack ran down the middle of the building as if it were about to split in two. I had come because my old childhood friend, Roderick Usher, had written me a letter begging for help. He said he was sick, both in body and mind, and I was his only hope. I hadn't seen him in years, but I couldn't ignore his request. When I finally saw Roderick, I was shocked. He looked sickly and pale, his eyes wide and nervous, like he was always expecting something terrible to happen. He told me he suffered from extreme sensitivity. Light, sound, and even certain fabrics made him uncomfortable. But worst of all, he believed his illness was caused by the house itself. Roderick's twin sister, Madeline, was even worse off. She had a strange neurological condition that made her weak and barely responsive, as if she were slowly wasting away. Roderick told me that she wouldn't survive much longer. The days passed and I felt uneasy in the house. The air was heavy and the silence felt unnatural. Then, one evening, Roderick told me that Madeline had died. He didn't want to bury her in the family graveyard just yet. He was afraid someone might steal her body. So we placed her in a stone tomb beneath the house. After that, Roderick became even more paranoid. He barely slept, pacing the halls and jumping at the slightest sound. A week later, during a terrible storm, he burst into my room, his face pale with terror. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but then I heard it. Soft, muffled sounds, like footsteps, like something or someone was moving inside the house. Roderick gasped. "She's alive," he said in a shaking voice. His eyes filled with horror. "We buried her alive." The sounds grew louder, scratching, dragging, knocking. And then, suddenly, the heavy doors burst open. Madeline stood there in her white burial clothes, her face pale and covered in blood. She stared at Roderick with wild eyes, and with her last ounce of strength, she fell onto him. He let out a terrible cry, and both twins collapsed to the floor, dead. Terrified, I ran. The storm raged around me as I fled from the house. As I reached the road, I turned back just in time to see the mansion begin to shake. The crack in the building widened, splitting the house in two. With a great, thunderous crash, the House of Usher crumbled and disappeared into the dark waters of the lake. And just like that, the Usher family was gone forever.